This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. What I'm looking at today is 1965's Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, directed by Freddie Francis. And it's overall a pretty good movie, though I have to admit the hook for me was that it stars Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and oddly enough, Donald Sutherland, which is really interesting because Donald Sutherland is the only member of the main cast who is American. And after doing a little research, I learned that the company that produced this movie, Amicus Pictures, while a company set up in Britain, was actually established by Americans, which might have something to do with Sutherland's casting. In any case, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors is an anthology series that consists of 5 separate stories. And its title is interesting and also very deceptive because, first off, it doesn't take place in a house at all. Well, I should say the overarching story, where we meet Dr. Terror, and I have a little more on that in a minute, takes place on a train. Each of the 5 stories is about one of the 5 people on the train. And while they may live in houses, that's not at all the point. The point is that this title is just really inaccurate, and it's very strange. And that even comes down to Peter Cushing's character. On the poster, he's named Dr. Terror, though actually his name is Dr. Shrek, which, according to the movie at any rate, I don't know if this is true, but it translates to terror. So that's not even technically speaking his name. In any case, he is a fortune reader via tarot cards, and he's in the train car with 5 other men, and he reads each of their fortunes. Suffice it to say, this is very much in the vein of Tales from the Crypt, which starred the great Sir Ralph Richardson, by the way. And so you kind of know where this is going, though the performances are really good, particularly Christopher Lee, who plays conceited and irritated so well. He's just a consummate actor. I really love his work. Peter Cushing, who's also very good as Dr. Shrek, and Donald Sutherland, who brings this very nervous, almost fidgety type energy to the proceedings. As I mentioned earlier, there are 5 individual stories. Of the 5, I think 3 are at least decent. 2 are almost disposable, though none of them are bad. It's just that the first 2 are kind of hardly there. The first story is called Werewolf, and I honestly didn't even remember it, really. And that's not to say it's bad, but there are no real werewolves to speak of. I think there was like a dog, but as I said, I barely remembered it. It wasn't bad, just wasn't that great either. The second story is called Creeping Vine. This reminded me of not only Day of the Triffids, but The Ruins, and revolves around plants potentially taking over the world, and also the Space 1999 episode Rules of Luton, where they actually succeeded. In any case, it's not bad, but it doesn't quite work either. It's hard to make plants look particularly threatening, and they don't do well here, which has more to do with the time the movie was made, 1965, so you're not going to get any great CGI or animatronic type effects, and it's just overall kind of silly. Interesting ending though, but still kind of silly. The third story was called Voodoo, and it was interesting because it seemed to recognize cultural appropriation, something we talk about to this day, and revolved around a jazz trumpeter who takes a gig, I want to say in Haiti, but I'm not 100% on that, but he takes this gig and he hears the music being played during a voodoo ceremony, and he steals it, much to his dismay, because things did not go well for him after that. It's not bad, and as I said, it kind of surprised me to see something from 1965 essentially talking about cultural appropriation. That was interesting. Not a bad story, not great either, but certainly not bad. Now things get really interesting with Christopher Lee's story, which is called Disembodied Hand. And this story is essentially the same as the Oliver Stone movie The Hand, decades later. So that kind of really surprised me. As I said, Christopher Lee is a great actor, a consummate professional, and he elevates material. Like Ralph Richardson I mentioned in the Tales of the Crypt movie. Typically, he makes things better than they actually are just by being there. Consummate professional. It's always great to watch Christopher Lee at work. And as I said, he definitely made Disembodied Hand one of the better of the 5. Last episode is called Vampire, and this is Donald Sutherland's episode. And as I said, he brings this oddly caffeinated energy to things. He seems almost frantic. Now, keep in mind, he's acting very calm, but he feels like he's always on the verge of panic. And it's fascinating. He's a great performer. He has a great look about him. And he really brings it together. This story actually gave me chills a little bit. It's kind of neat. It's fairly obvious, but the ending's a kind of a twist, which won't actually make sense in context of some of the things that go before it, but it's just a pleasant episode. It works really well. As I mentioned earlier, 5 men in a train car to an unknown destination is a cover that contains those 5 stories. And it's not shocking, it is interesting, though you know where it's going. I generally think this, at the time, may have been pretty harrowing, and Freddie Francis as a director is also interesting to me, if only because oftentimes in modern movies, the music drives the action, though it feels to me like it's used as a crutch sometimes as well, which is to say, you use dramatic music to emphasize what's happening or should be happening on screen. Most of the short stories in Dr. Terror's House of Horror have little to no accompanying music, which is interesting because it forces them to rely on the visuals to get across whatever they're trying to get across. And so it gets serious props in my book for that. And for the most part, it works pretty well. So what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or follow.